Hi there. Okay, so the first problem is asking us to write out the first 5 terms of the sequence a sub n equals 1 plus negative 1 to the nth power over n. So a sub 1 would be what we get when we replace n with 1. Negative 1 to the first power is negative 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So that completes a1. For a2, we would be performing 1 plus negative 1 squared. Negative 1 squared is 1, so we get 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 over 2 is equal to 1. For a sub 3, we would be getting a negative number, a negative 1 here again, because negative 1 cubed is negative 1, so that's going to give us a 0 again. And then a sub 4 is going to equal, see, negative 1 to the 4th would be positive 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 2 over 4 is 1/2. Finally, a sub 5 would be negative 1 to the 5th is negative 1, 1 plus negative 1 is 0, and 0 over 5 is equal to 0. For the second problem, it asks us to write out the last 5 terms of the sequence, sorry, the first 5 terms of the sequence, negative 1 to the n over n squared. So, a sub 1 is equal to negative 1 to the first power, which is negative 1, over 1 squared, which is 1, and negative 1 over 1 is negative 1. For a sub 2, negative 1 squared is positive 1, and this time it's going over 2 squared, which is 4, so we're getting 1/4. For a sub 3, negative 1 cubed is negative 1, 3 squared is 9, so here we're going to be getting a negative 1/9. A sub 4 will give us a positive 1 on the numerator and 16 on the bottom. And then finally, a sub 5 is going to be negative 1 to the 5th, which is a negative 1, and that's going to be over 5 squared, which is 25. For the next two problems, this one is a recursive form of a sequence and says write out the first 5 terms of this sequence. A sub 1 is equal to 3, so that's no big deal. A sub 1 equals 3. In order to get a sub 1 plus 1, in other words, to get a sub 2, we have to take 2 times the previous term minus 1. So a sub 2 is going to be equal to 2 times the previous term minus 1. 3 minus 1 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. For a sub 3, we're going to do 2 times the previous term subtracted by 1. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. For a sub 4, we're going to do 2 times the previous term minus 1. 6 minus 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. And finally, for a sub 5, we're going to do 2 times the previous term minus 1. And of course, 10 minus 1 is 9, and 9 times 2 is 18. For this problem, it's also recursive. Find out or write out the first 5 terms of this sequence, and this one calls upon 2 previous terms. So a sub 1 is 2, a sub 2 is 6. In order to figure out what a sub 3 is, a sub 3 would be to take the previous term and add on twice the term before that. So I'm going to take the previous term and add on twice the term that was before that. 6 plus 2 times 2, 2 times 2 is 4, with 6 is 10. What's a sub 4? That would be the previous term plus 2 times the term before that. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 10 is 22. A sub 5, previous term plus 2 times the term before that. So we end up getting 2 times 10 is 20, added to the 22, leaves us with 42.